You were just telling me about this real estate CEO before we started recording, and
Uh-huh.
I honestly just cannot stop thinking about the absolute paradox of his situation.
Oh, on a balance sheet, the guy looks completely invincible.
Right, because he's worth millions. Like,
Um,
literal millions on paper. He has this massive portfolio of prime properties. It's the kind of wealth most people, spend their entire lives dreaming about.
exactly. We are talking about hundreds of millions of Vietnamese dong in hard assets, just this sprawling empire of brick and mortar and land.
Right.
And yet one night, he finds himself in the back of an ambulance. He
Yes.
ends up in the emergency room.
Which is just wild.
Yeah, he was hospitalized from a severe stress-induced panic attack. It completely broke him down physically. I mean, heart palpitations, hyperventilation, the whole terrifying biological response.
And the inciting incident,
Yeah.
the thing that triggered this massive physical collapse, it wasn't some huge market crash, right?
No, not at all.
It wasn't a scandal that ruined his reputation. It was this terrifying realization that he could not liquidate 500 million VND, which is what, roughly 20,000 US dollars?
Yeah, about 20 grand.
He couldn't raise 20 grand in emergency cash to make his company's payroll the very next morning.
It is the ultimate nightmare scenario for anyone in business. I mean, he is entirely drowning in wealth, but he is literally dying of thirst for cash.
That's just such a visceral image, like to be so rich yet so entirely trapped by your own assets. You own city blocks, but you can't pay the receptionist.
Yeah, exactly.
Which brings us to the core question we are exploring today on this deep dive. And I want everyone listening to really think about this in the context of your own life. Just ask yourself, how much money is actually enough? Welcome to Human Constants.
It's a question that haunts literally everybody.
Oh, for sure.
From the gig worker who's, scraping by on wild income swings all the way up to that hospitalized CEO looking at a spreadsheet of millions. We all seem to chase this invisible finish line.
Right. We operate on this massive cultural assumption that if we just hit a certain magic number in our bank account, the anxiety will finally stop.
Yeah, like the stress will evaporate and we will finally be happy.
I see that assumption everywhere. And, looking at the source material, there is a very specific myth we need to tackle right out of the gate today.
Oh, the famous statistic.
Yes. Because whenever you bring up the relationship between money and happiness, someone always quotes that one famous statistic.
Without fail.
You hear it at dinner parties, it's plastered across self-help books, financial advisors repeat it like absolute gospel.
Right. The rule is always, once you hit $75,000 a year, extra money doesn't make you any happier.
Exactly. Come on, science already solved this, right?
Yeah.
That's what people say. They think the debate was settled over a decade ago. But I want to plant a flag right here, early on.
Okay, plant it.
Stick around, because later in this deep dive, we are going to show you how, for some people, money actually works better at buying happiness after you cross the $100,000 mark.
It's going to completely blow people's minds.
Yeah.
Because that $75,000 statistic is probably the most widely misquoted, misunderstood, and frankly, weaponized piece of social science in modern history.
Weaponized is a great word for it.
It really is. We need to dismantle it piece by piece today because that single data point is actively distorting how millions of people plan their careers and really their lives.
Well, let's dismantle it then, because that $75,000 number didn't just fall out of the sky.
No, not at all.
It has an incredible amount of academic weight behind it.
It came from a very real, very prestigious place. We are talking about a landmark 2010 study conducted by two Nobel laureates.
Wow.
Yeah, Daniel Kahneman and Angus Deaton. They analyzed an absolute mountain of data, like 450,000 responses from a daily Gallup poll.
That is a massive sample size.
Huge. And what they found was genuinely fascinating, but the nuance was just, it was completely lost in translation by the media.
How so?
Well, they actually measured two entirely different dimensions of human experience. They looked at life evaluation and they looked at daily emotional well-being.
Okay, wait, and those are very different things.
Completely different.
So life evaluation, that's when you take a step back, look at the grand narrative of your life, and think about your achievements.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the story you tell yourself about who you are, the big picture.
That's the macro view. But daily emotional well-being is the micro view. It's how you actually felt yesterday.
Okay.
Did you laugh? Were you stressed out sitting in traffic? Did you feel a moment of sadness or, a moment of joy?
So it's big picture versus the actual boots on the ground reality of getting through a random Tuesday.
Precisely. And Kahneman and Deaton found that life evaluation just keeps rising forever with income.
Really?
Forever. Forever. More money means more feeling of overarching success. There is basically no ceiling on ego or accomplishment.
I mean, that tracks, but what about the other one? The getting through Tuesday part.
Right, the daily emotional well-being, the actual feeling of getting through the day, that flatlined. According to their data, it hit a hard, impenetrable ceiling at exactly $75,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, after that point, making more money didn't reduce your daily stress, and it didn't increase your daily joy.
Which perfectly explains why the internet just grabbed onto that study and never let go. I mean, it's an incredibly comforting thought.
Deeply comforting, yeah.
If you manage to make $75,000, you are absolved from having to envy the billionaire. You can look at someone with a private jet and say, well, science says you aren't actually any happier than I am.
It totally democratizes happiness. It says that the ultimate human experience is accessible to the upper middle class, and you don't need to kill yourself climbing the corporate ladder forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you mentioned it's outdated and flawed. Why? Let's get into that.
Well, first of all, we just have to look at the basic economics of the situation. That study was published in 2010, but it was relying on data from 2008 and 2009. If we just run that through a basic inflation calculator, $75,000 back then has the purchasing power of well over $100,000 today.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah. That is a massive oversight in the cultural conversation. We've been quoting a number that literally doesn't mean the same thing anymore.
Exactly. People anchoring their life goals to $75,000 today are aiming at a target that eroded a full decade ago.
But even if we adjust the math, right?
Yeah.
Even if everyone starts saying the plateau is $100,000 today, the core concept of a plateau still holds up, doesn't it? The idea that eventually the utility of a dollar just drops off a cliff.
That's the thing. The plateau itself might have been an illusion.
An illusion? How?
It was created by the specific tools the researchers used to measure human emotion. See, the 2010 study relied heavily on a psychological phenomenon that is notoriously unreliable.
Which is?
Memory bias. The Gallup poll researchers were basically calling people up and asking them, how did you feel yesterday?
Oh, right. And human memory is shockingly terrible at doing that accurately.
It really is.
If you ask me right now how I felt yesterday, I'm not going to give you a mathematically balanced average of all my emotions. I mean, I'm going to remember whatever happened in the last hour before I went to sleep, maybe.
Yep, the recency effect.
Or I'm going to remember the single most extreme spike of emotion. Like if someone cut me off in traffic and I got furious, I'll remember that. The boring, neutral parts of the day just get completely deleted from the hard drive.
Memory completely flattens the nuance of lived experience. But it actually gets worse.
Worse than memory bias. How?
Compounding the memory bias was the specific scale the researchers were forced to use. When you are surveying 450,000 people, you need simple data.
Sure, you can't read a million essays.
Right. So they used a clunky binary yes or no scale.
Oh, no.
Yeah. They essentially asked the participants, did you experience joy yesterday? Yes or no?
That is wildly imprecise.
Right.
So if I made $75,000 and I had a generally okay day where I don't know, smiled at a dog on my walk, I check the box for, yes, I experienced joy.
Yep, you check yes.
And if I made $500,000 and had the absolute most euphoric, life-changing, magical day of my entire existence, I also just checked that exact same yes box.
That is the fatal flaw in the methodology. It created a completely artificial ceiling in the data. The tools they were using were entirely incapable of measuring the depth, the volume, or the intensity of human emotion.
They could only measure its sheer presence.
Yeah.
Yes or no? Did it happen or not?
Exactly. There's a great analogy for this in the source material. It's like trying to measure the depth of the Pacific Ocean using a standard 3-foot wooden yardstick.
Okay, I love that analogy.
Right. You wade out into the water, and very quickly the water goes over the top of the yardstick, and your conclusion is, well, the ocean is exactly 3 feet deep everywhere.
Because your tool literally cannot comprehend anything deeper than 3 feet.
Precisely.
So the famous $75,000 limit wasn't necessarily a limit on human happiness. It was basically a glitch in the yardstick.
It was a limitation of the measuring tape. And I'll tell you this, the sources we are diving into show that once you swap out that yardstick for a better tool, the entire paradigm shifts.
Okay, that completely flips the conventional wisdom upside down. So if the 2010 Gallup poll was the wooden yardstick, what does the modern measuring tape look like?
Well, how do you think we actually measure happiness without relying on flawed human memory today?
I mean, it has to be real time, right?
The modern measuring tape looks exactly like the piece of technology sitting in your pocket right now. A smartphone.
Ah, of course.
In 2021, a researcher named Matthew Killingsworth stepped into the academic ring to challenge this reigning champion of a theory.
It's like a scientific duel.
It really is. Killingsworth understood that relying on retrospective human memory was always going to produce muddy data. He needed to capture emotion in its raw, unfiltered state. So he built a custom smartphone app called Track Your Happiness.
Track your happiness, which honestly sounds incredibly useful for scientific research, even if it feels slightly dystopian to have an app monitoring your joy.
A little big brother, yeah.
How did it actually work in practice? Like, how annoying was this for the users?
Well, he used a technique called experience sampling. He took a massive pool of 33,000 working adults, and his app would simply ping them at random, unpredictable times during their waking hours.
Just a random push notification.
Yep. Their phone would buzz, and the screen would pop up with a very simple question. How do you feel right now?
Right in the middle of whatever they were doing.
Exactly. But the brilliance wasn't just the timing. It was the input method. Instead of forcing them into a binary yes or no box, he gave them a continuous sliding scale.
Oh. Okay, so they aren't relying on memory. They're answering in the micro moment while the emotion is still actively coursing through their nervous system.
Exactly.
And they have a slider so they can drag it to indicate whether they are mildly annoyed or absolutely devastated or pleasantly content or completely euphoric.
Right. It gives you the depth that the yardstick completely missed. The data fidelity was unprecedented. He collected millions of these real-time micro moments.
Millions. That's a lot of pings.
It's a huge data set. And when he plotted all of this continuous data against income, the result was absolutely explosive for the scientific community.
What did he find?
Killingsworth found zero plateau. None.
None at all.
Happiness kept rising linearly alongside logarithmic income. It rocketed straight past $75,000, straight past the inflation-adjusted $100,000, and it just kept climbing past $200,000 and beyond.
Okay, I want to pause on a technical term you just used because the sources mention it too, and it's vital we translate it for everyone listening. Logarithmic income.
Right, that's an important one.
If happiness rises linearly with logarithmic income, that doesn't mean you just add $10,000 and get the exact same bump in happiness every single time, right?
Correct. Logarithmic scaling means we were talking about percentages and multiples, not flat dollar amounts.
Okay, break that down for me.
Let's say you are making $20,000 a year and you get a $20,000 raise.
Okay, you just doubled your income.
Exactly. Your life completely transforms. The stress of buying groceries vanishes. You can fix your car. That is a massive leap in happiness.
Huge leap.
But if you are making $200,000 a year and you get that exact same flat $20,000 raise,
You probably barely notice it. I mean, it might mean upgrading your vacation or buying a nicer watch, but it doesn't change your fundamental reality. You already aren't worrying about groceries.
Exactly. To get that same massive leap in happiness, to double your joy, you have to double your income again.
So the person making $200,000 needs a raise of another $200,000 to feel the same psychological impact that the first person felt from just $20K.
Yes. The absolute dollar amounts have to get exponentially larger, but the key finding from Killingsworth was that if the income keeps multiplying, the happiness keeps rising.
Wow.
There is no hard stop where money suddenly becomes entirely useless.
Okay, warm skepticism activated here. I have to push back on this because this clashes with basic human observation.
Bring it on.
I mean, look around. We all know miserable rich people. We read about them in the news. We watch documentaries about their disastrous personal lives. Some of us might even have them in our own families.
Very true.
And we know that human beings possess this incredible capacity for adaptation. It's the hedonic treadmill, right? At a certain point, a nicer car is just a piece of metal you commute in. A bigger house is just more empty rooms you have to furnish and vacuum.
Yeah, the shine wears off.
Right. So if human adaptation is a constant, how could happiness just go up infinitely with wealth? Fundamentally, money cannot permanently change your internal state.
It is a phenomenal pushback, and you are tapping into the exact same debate that fractured the scientific community when Killingsworth published his paper.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It contradicts a Nobel laureate.
Exactly. You had a massive schism. On one side, you have Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate, defending the plateau theory. On the other side, you have Killingsworth, the modern challenger, with millions of real-time data points saying the plateau is a myth.
So what usually happens in academia here? Do they just write passive-aggressive, highly footnoted, peer-reviewed papers attacking each other for the next 20 years?
That is normally exactly how it works. That's the academic playbook. But instead of engaging in a bitter, ego-driven feud, these two researchers did something incredibly rare and profoundly admirable.
What did they do?
In 2023, Kahneman and Killingsworth actually joined forces. They engaged in a formal process called an adversarial collaboration.
Oh, that's amazing. It's like the Avengers team-up of behavioral economics.
Hmm.
I love the concept of an adversarial collaboration. It requires so much intellectual humility to sit down with a person trying to debunk your legacy.
It is the ultimate flex of scientific integrity. They brought in a third, independent scientist to act as a neutral referee.
Okay.
They dumped both of their massive data sets onto the table, merged them together, and sat down to figure out which one of them was fundamentally wrong.
The suspense here is actually palpable. You have the ultimate face-off between the yardstick and the smartphone.
Yeah.
What did they find when they cross-referenced everything?
Well, they found that neither of them was completely wrong,
Okay.
but both of them had missed one crucial underlying variable. It was a blind spot so massive that it completely skewed both of their original conclusions.
What was the blind spot?
They had both forgotten to account for the initial distribution of happiness.
Translate that for me. Does that mean they failed to account for how happy a person naturally is to begin with, before the money is even factored in?
That is exactly what it means. In their previous studies, they had taken all of humanity, people suffering from chronic depression, people who are naturally optimistic, people going through vicious divorces, people who just fell in love, and they lumped them all together into one single average line on a graph.
Oh, I see. But human beings aren't an average.
No, not at all. So when the referee helped them separate the data based on people's baseline emotional state, the truth finally revealed itself. And the twist is absolutely fascinating.
Lay it on me.
Kahneman's plateau does actually exist.
Wait, it does?
It does, but it only exists for the unhappiest 15 to 20% of the population.
Wait, really? So for the most miserable 20% of society, that $100,000 plateau is a very real, very hard ceiling.
It is an absolute brick wall for them. The data shows that for this unhappy minority, as their income goes up from poverty up to about $100,000, their misery drops incredibly sharply.
Right, because they're getting out of poverty.
The relief is immense. But the very moment their income crosses into six figures, the psychological benefits of money just stop, completely flatline.
Wow.
You could hand them another $100,000 or $1 million, and it would do absolutely nothing to improve their emotional state.
We really need to explore the mechanics of why that happens. Why does the magic of money suddenly evaporate for this specific group of people once their basic needs are met?
It comes down to understanding the profound limits of what capital can actually fix. The sources highlight a specific scenario that illustrates this perfectly.
Okay, what's the scenario?
Imagine a highly skilled tech engineer working in Silicon Valley.
Okay, classic high earner.
Right. They are making $200,000 a year.
Which puts them way past the $100,000 plateau. On paper, they have completely won the economic game.
On paper, they are incredibly wealthy.
Yeah.
And the money successfully did its job, right? It pulled them out of physical poverty. They never worry about the price of groceries. Their rent is on auto pay. They have premium health insurance.
So no material stress.
None. But this specific engineer happens to suffer from clinical depression and profound agonizing loneliness.
Oh, and there it is.
Yeah.
Because you cannot throw $100 bills at clinical heartbreak, you can't swipe a platinum credit card to cure a chemical imbalance in your brain, or to magically summon a deep, trusting friendship.
Exactly. Money is an incredibly potent tool for removing external stressors. It fixes the broken down car, it pays the sudden medical bill, it repairs the leaky roof. But capital is completely, utterly useless at curing internal psychological trauma, profound grief, or clinical depression.
You just can't reach inside.
Right. So for that unhappy 15 to 20% of the population, money solves all the logistical problems that can be solved by money right around that $100,000 mark.
And then what?
After that point, the external noise is gone, and they are just left sitting in a quiet, expensive house, face to face with the internal demons that money cannot touch.
That is an incredibly stark reality. It really reframes the whole money doesn't buy happiness argument. It's not that money is bad, it's just that it has a very specific jurisdiction, and it can't operate outside of it.
That's a great way to put it. A specific jurisdiction.
But what about the other side of the coin? What about the vast majority of people who aren't in that bottom 20% of clinical misery?
This is where the data gets incredibly optimistic. For the majority of the population, the remaining 80% happiness never stops rising with income. The plateau is a complete myth for them.
Really?
And for the happiest 30% of the population, the psychological benefits of money actually accelerate after they cross $100,000.
Accelerate. Meaning the graph doesn't just go up steadily, but the curve actually gets steeper.
Hmm.
Like the more money they make, the faster they gain happiness.
Yes. And the psychology behind it makes perfect sense. This top 30% isn't weighed down by deep psychological trauma or clinical misery.
Their baseline is already healthy.
Exactly. So when you give them surplus capital past the point of basic survival and comfort, it doesn't just sit in a bank account. It acts as rocket fuel.
Rocket fuel for what?
Because they are emotionally healthy, they use that extra money to actively design a better life. They use it to maximize their autonomy, to buy back their time, to pursue intrinsic hobbies that give them purpose, and to deepen their social connections by traveling to see friends or hosting family. For them, money unlocks the world.
So society has been looking at money completely wrong this entire time. We expect it to be a magical elixir that does everything for everyone, but really, money has a very specific, limited job description.
Yes, it's a tool, not magic.
There's an analogy in the sources that I think perfectly captures this dynamic, and I really want to highlight it. It's based on a 2015 study by a researcher named Kushlev.
Oh, Kushlev's work is fantastic.
Right. The framing is this. Money isn't a joy machine, it is a painkiller.
That is the single most important conceptual shift in this entire discussion. Kushlev's data is revolutionary because it separates human emotion into two distinct tracks.
Tell me about the tracks.
He proved mathematically that higher income aggressively reduces the frequency of daily sadness, but it does absolutely nothing to increase daily joy.
Which, when you first hear it, sounds like a paradox.
Right.
Until you really sit down and think about the texture of a normal day.
Think about the actual mechanics of what causes daily sadness. It's almost always friction.
Like what?
It's the moment your washing machine breaks and floods the floor. It's the sudden realization that your kid is sick and you don't know how you're going to afford the medical copay. It's your transmission blowing out on the highway when you're already late for work.
Oh, man. Yeah.
These events cause sharp, immediate spikes of panic, stress, and misery. But if you have liquid money, you simply pay the friction to go away.
The money acts as a localized anesthetic.
Exactly. You throw cash at the mechanic, the car is fixed, and the panic is instantly neutralized. You don't suffer the lingering, cascading trauma of poverty.
You don't have to take the bus for 3 weeks and lose your job because you were late.
Right.
But socializing that friction, neutralizing pain, is not the same thing as creating joy. Not being in agonizing pain is just baseline neutrality. It's a zero on the scale. It's not a positive number.
Exactly. Money is a painkiller. It numbs the logistical aches of living in a capitalist society. But a joy machine. Joy requires a completely different currency.
What's the currency for joy?
Joy requires deep social connection. It requires uninterrupted time spent with people you genuinely love. It requires a sense of purpose, mastery, and belonging. A cash dispenser cannot spit out a meaningful 2-hour conversation with an old friend.
No, it can't.
A high salary cannot force your children to trust you.
It's like taking ibuprofen. If you have a massive headache, taking the painkiller removes the negative sensation. You feel better. But swallowing a pill doesn't suddenly make you feel euphoric or fulfilled. It just brings you back to a state where you are actually capable of functioning.
That's spot on.
So, if money is primarily a painkiller, the obvious question becomes, how do we properly stock our financial pharmacy?
Okay, I like that framing.
Because we started this whole discussion with the story of that real estate CEO. He had hundreds of millions in assets. His pharmacy was technically massive, but he still ended up hospitalized over a $20,000 cash shortfall. The painkiller failed him completely.
And that story perfectly transitions us into the research on what actually buys financial peace. To understand the CEO's collapse, we have to look at a brilliant 2016 UK bank study conducted by a researcher named Ruberton.
What did Ruberton do?
They took a deep dive into the actual bank accounts of 585 customers. They didn't just look at one number either. They examined their total net worth, their monthly salaries, and their liquid cash on hand.
And just to define terms for everyone listening, liquid cash means money sitting in a checking or basic savings account, right?
Yes.
It is capital that you can access right this second without asking anyone for permission and without having to sell anything.
Right. It is not tied up in a 30-year mortgage. It is not locked away in a retirement fund that penalizes you for withdrawing it early. It is pure, immediately accessible cash.
Okay, so they looked at these three metrics: net worth, salary, liquid cash. What did they find?
The results of Ruberton's study were definitive. The ultimate predictor of feeling financially safe, The metric that actually determines whether you sleep deeply at night without a tight chest isn't your total net worth, and it isn't even your high salary.
It's the liquid cash,
It is entirely determined by your liquid wealth.
which provides the complete psychological diagnosis for our CEO.
Yeah.
The guy had infinite net worth, but zero liquidity.
Exactly. Net worth is largely an ego metric. It looks great on a Forbes list, but it is functionally useless in a Tuesday morning crisis.
Right. You cannot pay a sudden hospital bill by offering the receptionist a fractional share of a commercial office building.
Here, take 1% of my strip mall. It doesn't work. If a crisis hits and all your wealth is tied up in illiquid real estate or highly volatile stocks, you are trapped.
You literally can't get to your own money.
You either can't access the money in time, or you are forced to sell your assets at a massive, catastrophic loss just to generate the cash. And knowing that you are trapped in that position triggers a massive biological stress response.
So the cash is the buffer.
Liquid cash is the true psychological shock absorber. It is the suspension system on the car of your life.
Okay, so having a robust pile of liquid cash is the shock absorber for emergencies. But what about the daily flow of income itself? Because a lot of people don't just get a flat salary. Let me pose a hypothetical scenario to you based on how people actually work today. Let's say we have two people. Person A is a freelance graphic designer. They have wild months. Sometimes they land a huge corporate client and make $5,000. Sometimes they make absolutely zero. But at the end of the year, it averages out to $3,000 a month.
Okay, the gig economy is special.
Right. Now, person B is an administrative clerk. They make exactly $2,000 every single month, like clockwork, same day, same amount no matter what. Is the freelancer happier because their overall average income is 50% higher?
Statistically and biologically, no. The freelancer is likely in a much worse state psychologically,
Even with more money.
even with more average money. And this reveals a massive finding from the research on what economists call income volatility. Wildly unpredictable income doesn't just cause budgeting problems, it triggers a chronic biological stress response.
Let's dive into the biology of that. Why does unpredictability hurt us so much? I imagine your brain is constantly scanning the horizon for threats, constantly on high alert, because you literally don't know if you will have the capital to pay rent in 3 weeks.
It is entirely rooted in human evolution. Our nervous systems are not designed for abstract financial spreadsheets. Your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, processes financial unpredictability as a literal physical threat to your survival.
Like a predator in the bushes.
Exactly. When the freelancer hits a $0 month, their brain floods their system with cortisol, the primary stress hormone.
Right.
Cortisol is designed to help you run away from a predator in a short burst. But when your income is volatile, that cortisol drip never turns off.
You are perpetually in fight or flight mode.
Yes. And chronic cortisol exposure degrades your cognitive function. It impairs the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning and rational decision-making.
You get trapped.
You literally lose the biological capacity to plan for the future because your brain believes you are in imminent danger today. You are stuck in a reactive survival mode.
So the clerk is actually better off.
The data clearly shows that predictability beats a higher but erratic average. A lower steady income allows your nervous system to regulate. It tells your brain, we are safe. The resources are reliable. A high but volatile income keeps you in a state of chronic biological panic.
That completely reframes the hustle culture narrative that prioritizes massive erratic gains over steady employment.
It really does.
Okay, so we know we need liquid cash for shock absorption, and we need predictable income to keep cortisol levels down. But there is a third massive monster in the room when it comes to financial peace, and it ruins the lives of millions of people: debt.
Debt is the great destroyer of financial peace. But the research suggests we need to completely overhaul how we think about it.
How so?
We usually discuss debt as just a mathematical reality, like a negative number on a spreadsheet, an interest rate to be managed. But the reality is that debt is psychological imprisonment.
It is the ultimate anti-painkiller. It is a pain generator. I was thinking about how to visualize this, and there is a modern analogy that I think nails it.
Let's hear it.
Living with debt is like trying to work on your computer while you have 50 browser tabs open in your brain, and you don't know which one is playing the screaming audio.
Oh, that is a phenomenal analogy. That's exactly how it feels. The formal academic term for that screaming audio is cognitive bandwidth depletion.
Cognitive bandwidth. Let's unpack the mechanics of that. What does that actually mean for a person's day-to-day life?
Think about the human brain like a computer's RAM its working memory. We only have a finite amount of processing power available at any given moment.
Okay, makes sense.
Every time you try to sit down and focus on a complex project at work, or every time you try to be fully present and enjoy a dinner with your family, a massive percentage of your brain's processing power is being eaten alive in the background by the anxiety of those loan payments.
So you aren't fully there.
No. You are physically sitting at the dinner table, smiling at your kids, but 40% of your brain is running a background calculation on how you are going to cover the minimum payment on the Visa card next week.
Just constantly draining your battery.
Exactly. It creates severe decision fatigue. Even if your raw income is relatively high, if your debt burden is also high, you are fundamentally blinded from enjoying your life because your cognitive RAM is maxed out.
You literally can't process the joy in front of you.
You cannot experience joy because you do not have the bandwidth left to process it. The toxicity of debt goes far beyond the mathematics of compound interest. It literally robs you of your presence in your own life.
It's a background virus scam that you can never turn off.
That's exactly it.
Okay, so this has been a heavy exploration of the mechanics of money. We've dismantled the 75K myth. We've established money as a painkiller. We understand the biological necessity of shock absorbers and a predictable income. And we see how debt destroys bandwidth.
We've covered a lot of ground.
How do we take all of this theory and actually apply it? Like, how does a listener sitting in traffic right now calculate their own personal enough?
Well, the researchers in the source material synthesized all this behavioral data into a really brilliant, actionable framework.
Oh.
They argue that enough is not one single, universally applicable number. It's not just $100 for everyone. Instead, they broke it down into 4 distinct tiers. Think of it like a ladder of financial psychology.
Okay, let's climb the ladder. The sources lay this out clearly, and it makes so much intuitive sense to me. Tier 1 is survival. This is raw, basic biology.
Yes. Tier 1 is the absolute foundation. Do you have a safe shelter? Do you have enough calories to not starve? Do you have basic medical care to keep your body functioning?
The bare minimum to stay alive.
Exactly. And money spent in Tier 1 has the absolute highest return on investment for human happiness anywhere on the spectrum because it is directly removing physical suffering and the immediate threat of death.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Going from starving to not starving is a massive leap in well-being. Once you aren't starving and you have a roof, you graduate to Tier 2. The sources define Tier 2 as security.
Security.
This is where you achieve what they call zero financial fragility. What does that mean in practice?
Tier 2 is where you build the infrastructure of peace. This means you have accumulated that 3 to 6 month liquid emergency fund, the shock absorber we spent so much time discussing.
The cash in the bank.
Right. And crucially, it also means you have completely eliminated toxic, high-interest consumer debt. You have closed all those screaming browser tabs.
So Tier 1 keeps your physical body alive, and Tier 2 allows your nervous system to relax so you can actually sleep at night.
Exactly. You are safe.
But Tier 3 is where the research gets incredibly compelling for me. Tier 3 is autonomy, and the sources are very clear here. Once your basic needs are met, the highest possible psychological return on investment for your money is using it to buy time.
Autonomy is the ultimate flex of capital. It is using money to construct a buffer between yourself and the relentless demands of the world. It is buying agency over your own schedule.
There's a very specific story from the research that illustrates this perfectly, and I want to share
The
it.
executive, yes.
They studied a highly paid female executive. She was making an incredible salary, easily in the top percentiles, but she was entirely burned out. Her emotional well-being was just in the gutter. She was miserable.
Right, because she had high gross income but absolutely zero time autonomy. She was wealthy on paper, but she was a prisoner to her schedule.
Working 80-hour weeks, presumably.
Exactly. So she looked at the data on happiness and made a radical, deliberate choice.
What did she do?
She sacrificed a full quarter of her massive income, gave up 25% of her salary to hire 2 things: a driver to navigate her grueling, stressful daily commute, and a cleaner to handle her household chores.
So she took a huge pay cut to outsource her friction. By spending that money, she effectively bought back 2 entire hours of her life every single day.
Yes. Her raw income went down significantly. A financial advisor looking purely at a spreadsheet might say she made a bad move, right? Less money coming in, higher expenses.
That math.
But her life satisfaction skyrocketed. She used those 2 recovered hours to sit on the floor and play with her child and to decompress with a book.
She bought her life back.
She transformed her capital into time, which is the one asset you can never generate more of. That is the essence of Tier 3. That is where we see that acceleration of happiness for the top 30% we talked about earlier.
Okay, so we have survival, security, and autonomy. Those all sound incredibly healthy and aspirational. But then we hit Tier 4.
Oh, Tier 4.
The sources define Tier 4 as status. This is spending money specifically to maintain relative wealth compared to your peers. It's buying the luxury car, fighting for the elite zip code, wearing the designer clothes with the visible logos.
Yep.
It is spending capital to broadcast a signal to the tribe that you have made it.
That is the exact definition.
And I'm going to push back aggressively here on behalf of human nature, because I hear a massive amount of academic judgment baked into the word status.
You think it's unfair?
Isn't it completely biologically natural to want to climb the social ladder? Status competition is arguably what drives all human progress, innovation, and art. We want the nice car because we want to feel proud of our labor. We want to be respected by our peers. Why is Tier 4 framed by the researchers as this inherently negative trap?
It is a totally fair pushback, and you are right that the drive for status is biologically hardwired into us as social primates. We want to be high up in the tribe.
Right.
But the researchers frame Tier 4 as a negative, not out of moral judgment, but out of mathematical and psychological reality.
Explain that.
Tier 4 triggers what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill.
Okay, the idea that we just adapt to whatever luxury we have and immediately want more.
Exactly. When you buy the $80,000 luxury car to signal your status, it feels absolutely incredible for about a month. The dopamine hit is very real.
New car smell.
Yep. But then neuroplasticity kicks in. Your brain gets used to the leather seats and the smooth ride. Your baseline resets. That $80,000 car is no longer a luxury. It is just your new normal.
It just becomes the car you take to buy groceries.
Exactly. And worse, you pull up to a stoplight and your neighbor pulls up next to you in a $100,000 car. Suddenly, your incredible success feels like a humiliating failure.
So the finish line is a mirage. It keeps moving further away the faster you run.
It is a literal bottomless pit. There's no point of saturation for relative status, but it is actually much more destructive than just feeling a little envious of your neighbor.
How does it get worse?
The research points to a very dark phenomenon called misery at the top. To maximize your income enough to constantly fund Tier 4, to keep up with the escalating costs of the bigger house, the better car, the elite country club, you usually have to make extreme sacrifices.
What kind of sacrifices?
You have to sacrifice your weekends, you have to answer emails at midnight, and you inevitably isolate yourself socially to work more hours.
I see the trap now. You are actively destroying your Tier 3 to fund your Tier 4.
Exactly. You are burning your autonomy, your precious time and freedom to make more money. And very often, people take on massive debt to buy the status symbols, which destroys their Tier 2 security.
That is wild.
You are cannibalizing the foundational tiers of your psychological stability, all to fund a status signal that will expire the very moment your neighbor buys something shinier. It is a psychological trap that actively decreases your overall life satisfaction.
You're trading the exact things that actually generate internal peacetime, freedom, and security for the things that merely make you look peaceful to strangers.
Yes. That's a profound way to summarize it.
That is a massive realization, and it perfectly explains why we cannot just use a global average to determine what enough is. You can't just slap a sticker on the wall that says $100,000 is enough for everyone. The cost of maintaining these tiers is entirely dependent on where you are standing.
Right. The cost of enough is hyperlocal. It is dictated by the microeconomics of your specific environment.
Let's use an example to ground this, because I think people need to hear this. There is a fascinating story in the research about a single mother living in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam.
Yes, this is a perfect case study.
She makes 35 million VND a month, which converts to around 1,700 US dollars. Now, if you look at a national spreadsheet in Vietnam, that is a fantastic salary. It is well above the national median.
Right. If you run her numbers on a global calculator, she should be firmly comfortable. She should be easily operating in Tier 2 or even Tier 3.
But you cannot ignore the local reality. She lives in a major, rapidly developing urban center. Let's look at her actual life.
Okay, let's look at her expenses.
After she pays for urban rent in a safe district, and after she pays for international school tuition because she wants her child to have a competitive education in a globalized economy, and after she pays for basic dependent care so she can actually go to work, her disposable income, her liquid cash, is practically zero.
Wow. So despite having a quote-unquote high salary on paper, her local environment and her responsibilities mean she is still hovering right on the jagged edge between Tier 1 and Tier 2.
She has absolutely no shock absorbers.
Right, one medical emergency or a sudden rent increase and the entire structure collapses.
Exactly. You cannot use global averages.
Mhm.
Your definition of enough is entirely dictated by your zip code, the number of dependents relying on your income, and the realities of your local housing market.
Totally.
So, if the global averages are garbage, how does the listener sitting in their car right now actually calculate their number? How do they find their personal enough?
Well, the researchers actually developed a specific mathematical formula for this.
A formula for enough.
Yeah. They took all the abstract psychology and distilled it into an equation. C plus SSM plus doctor plus RB plus RB ball.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of algebra.
It sounds like algebra, but it's actually a blueprint for a life. Let's break it down naturally.
Okay, let's walk through it together and apply it to the mother in Ho Chi Minh City to see how it works. The formula starts with C. I'm going to guess C is core living costs.
Exactly. This is your Tier 1. Housing, food, basic transportation, utilities, the absolute non-negotiable costs of keeping your physical life running in your specific city.
Okay, so she has a high C because of urban rent. Then we add ism. It sounds like a chemical element, but what is the is variable?
ISM stands for safety margin. This is your liquid buffer. It is usually calculated as an additional 20 to 30% on top of your core costs.
And what do you do with that 20%?
Nothing. This money is not meant to be invested. It is meant to sit entirely in liquid cash to absorb those shocks and smooth out any income volatility.
It's the shock absorber we talked about.
Yeah.
Okay, so C plus is, then we add doctor.
Doctor is dependent responsibilities. This is the multiplier for your specific family structure.
Like having kids?
Kids, yes, but also, are you taking care of an aging parent with medical needs? Are you paying for childcare for 2 toddlers? This variable can radically inflate your enough number.
Which is exactly what is happening to the mother in Vietnam.
Mhm.
Her dependent responsibility for her child's international school is so massive that it is completely eating her SIMM, her safety margin.
Exactly. It throws the whole equation out of balance.
Okay, then we add ARB. What is the risk buffer?
ARB is the money you have to spend on insurance to protect against catastrophic loss. Health insurance, life insurance, property insurance.
Just offloading risks.
Right, and there is a fascinating geopolitical insight here. If you live in a country with a robust social safety net, like, say, universal health care in Northern Europe, your personal RB variable essentially drops to 0.
That is a huge point. Society and government policy can actually structurally lower the cost of happiness for its citizens by removing the need for massive individual risk buffers.
Exactly. They take the burden off the individual.
And finally, we add R,
R is the autonomy reserve. This is the magic fund.
the Tier 3 money.
Yes. This is the capital specifically allocated to buy back your time and give you choices. It's the money to hire the cleaner, to take a lower paying but less stressful job, or to take a 3-month sabbatical to recover from burnout.
So if we put it all together, core living costs, plus your safety margin, plus your dependence, plus your risk buffer, plus your autonomy reserve, you add those all up, and that equals your exact personal enough number.
Yes. That is the true mathematical target. But, and this is huge, there's a massive critical catch to this entire formula.
What's the catch?
This equation only balances, it only provides peace if you completely and utterly exclude Tier 4.
No status spending allowed in the formula.
None. If you allow lifestyle creep into the equation, if you constantly inflate your core costs and your autonomy reserve just to match the spending habits of your wealthier peers, the equation becomes infinite.
The hedonic treadmill breaks the mouth.
Exactly. It will never balance. You will chase the horizon forever.
Because you cannot mathematically satisfy a bottomless pit. So if we step back from the formulas and the tiers, the Gallup polls, and the scientific duels, what is the ultimate conclusion here? What is the core truth about financial freedom?
The profound truth that emerges from all this data is that financial freedom is not about buying endless luxury. It's not about yachts or private jets. It is about something much quieter and much more powerful. True financial freedom is the right to say no.
The right to say no. Wow. That is incredibly potent.
It is the ultimate luxury. It is having enough liquid cash, enough security, and enough autonomy that you can look a toxic boss in the eye and walk away.
Yeah.
You can leave an exploitative work environment. You can exit a dangerous or unfulfilling relationship without the paralyzing fear of financial ruin. That is what capital is actually for. It buys you the sovereign right to refuse the things that destroy your peace.
It buys you a boundary. Money is a brilliant, highly effective painkiller for the logistical miseries of life, but it is a terrible, fundamentally broken substitute for human connection and internal peace.
Absolutely. And your net worth is largely just an ego metric designed to impress strangers. But your liquid cash and your free time are the true, undeniable measures of your actual freedom.
So to everyone listening right now, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to mull over. When you finish your commute or your workout today, sit down and actually look at your own bank statements for the last month. Look at where the energy of your life is actually flowing. Calculate your personal enough number using that formula, and then ask yourself the hard question, which of the 4 tiers are you really spending your life energy to fund? Thanks for diving deep with us.